You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good. We are inching ever so closely to the NFL draft, but it's another fabulous Tuesday night. Happy to be back here with you boys. So how are y'all doing?
It's great. We've got NHL season's wrapping up. I think the NBA play-in tournament is this week, right? It's an exciting time. We learned not a lot of NFL news. It happens right now. And Derek and I kind of talked about this last week. And Kevin, I'm sure you can weigh in on it. This is like smoke screen season, where like you're going to start to see some dudes meteorically rise, some dudes fall. A lot of weird reports might come out. Like that's kind of the season that we're in for the NFL.
It is the lying season. That is correct.
I feel like I felt like last year was pretty quiet too, though.
Yeah.
I felt like last year's quiet. This year, for the most part, is quiet. Like you still have the JJ McCarthy buzz.
Michael Penix is seeming to get a lot of buzz starting to come around too.
And quarterbacks, I think a lot of teams that are so quarterback thirsty, I think maybe trying to throw off some players, right? Or throw off some other teams, maybe bolster some people that they're not actually interested in. It's not super uncommon, especially at that position, right? That's what you've kind of come to expect in this. I did see. Now I want to make sure I get the name right, so I'm going to stall while I look to see who it was. But there is an O lineman who is visiting everybody and their brother this week. And actually some breaking news as I look for this. JC Latham is the one who's visiting a bunch of teams in the top 10. He's visited the Jets. He's visiting the Jets. He will have also visited the Cardinals, the Titans, and the Bears. The Bears is an interesting one. Let me just kick the tires and see what's up. But some breaking news a couple hours ago. Royce Freeman to the Cowboys via Todd Archer, excuse me. Royce Freeman, who was a third-round pick of Denver in 2018, full circle moment. We were just looking at the 2018 and 2019 NFL drafts and seeing how much of a colossal it has been for the Broncos over the last 6-7 years. So yeah, how does that fit in with you? With the Dallas running backs now are currently listed as Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, and Royce Freeman. Which one of those three are you taking in the upcoming fantasy draft? Have to take one.
None of the above.
Have to take one.
I'll take a kicker.
I'll
That's a little.
I'll take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
Yes.
Defensive special teams.
Yes, exactly. Take the kicker. Take something.
I don't think they're done yet, right? Like it's just as much a camp body as anything else. God knows they're gonna have 5 or 6 of them going into camp. So, they've been talking to Zeke. It sounds like to kind of reunite there. My guess is they probably find one in the draft to bring in, and then keep an eye on what some of these other teams are doing, and maybe they're able to pick one off of someone else's squad right before the season starts. But yawn. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't do anything. Good for Royce Freeman. Yeah, good for Royce, right? Good for him. Good for his family. Doesn't move the needle, and it definitely doesn't do anything for fantasy purposes. So,
right,
pass.
Yes, agreed.
There you go. Late breaking news that does nothing for us.
Yeah, it's all good. We got some exciting news coming up for everybody here with our mock draft 2.0.
Absolutely.
Take that to the bank.
Should be fun. And this was one too that when we were going through this, there were some surprise picks. Not gonna lie, there were some ones that I was like, oh, there's no way that this guy's gonna be sitting down here. Oh, he's sitting down here. Gotta go. Like, so
I for one of them at 21 there, that was one that I thought, oh, he's still available. So aforementioned guy that we were talking about, talking to teams in the top 10, JC Latham, he had a pretty good fall in our mock 2.0.
Yep. That's what they call a tease in the biz, I think.
Sure. I kind of gave it all away, but yeah.
Yes, you did.
So they call giving it all away in the biz.
Oh, okay. There we go. Any other thoughts? Any other places we want to? Any other roads we want to go down here before we get into mocking?
No, I mean it's been kind of boring.
Yeah,
and the NFL
workout started, right?
Yeah.
And there wasn't really any like huge. Oh, they're not showing up because of a contract dispute. Like, nah. Like it's kind of ho hum. There wasn't anything big like that.
Right. Very fair. Alrighty. Well, let's go ahead and we'll get on into it. And mock draft 2.0. Last week we brought you 1.0 and some differences when we look at 1.0 to 2.0. 2.0 trades are allowed. We're still drafting it where we're rotating through it and basically working as the GM for the pick that's there. And then allowing that to be traded out and rocking and rolling from there. So that being the case, we'll get that started. Chicago Bears are on the clock, and I had that pick, and to no surprise, they went with Caleb Williams. So pretty chalky move, no surprise here.
All right. What are your odds that Chicago's, because we've done this now twice now, and I think when we do our individual drafts, which is what we'll reveal next week, is there a chance that it's anybody else other than Caleb Williams here?
Yes.
Okay.
It's always a chance.
There's always a chance, right? Baker came out of nowhere, right? Baker came out of nowhere the year he went first overall, right? We were sitting right about this time. And even a little bit later, Baker got some late, like it was draft week almost, right? Monday, Tuesday. You start hearing of that before, the Vegas odds kind of caught up and you realized he was going to be number one. So yes, it's possible. We've seen it before. Although on the scale of likelihood, I would put it at
slim.
It is 5% likely they draft someone else, but it is plausible.
Okay, if they do go somewhere else, where do you think they go? Wideout, O-line, defense? Is there a defensive player that
they're going quarterback
with
this first pick? Yeah.
So it's quarterback no matter what.
Correct.
I think that you tipped your hand to that when you've already shipped Justin Fields out of town.
Sure.
Yes, I would co-sign with that. There's too much. There's too much at risk for them to. Well, we'll just take the guy that comes to us at 9. Like, at 1, you are taking what you perceive to be your franchise quarterback. All indications are it's Caleb Williams, and I think he's going to be a bust. Like I've said it on our show before. I know when we were talking player profiles, there are too many red flags with Caleb Williams.
Fair enough.
All righty. Kevin, that puts you on the clock number 2 with the Washington.
So the Washington Commanders are going to go under center as well. I have them selecting Jaden Daniels at number 2 overall.
So this is the guy that I think is like the biggest mover, right? Like he's been the one from the start of when we kind of started looking at this draft class to now Kevin has him going number 2 overall. You're not the only one, I don't think, that says that this is a plausible thing. I'm not sure that I thought that. I was a little bit surprised there. But I'm not entirely surprised. I think it is a quarterback.
I think Daniels offers the highest ceiling of the remaining quarterbacks.
Uh-huh.
Now, his floor may not be quite as high as a May or McCarthy, but I do think he has a higher ceiling than either one of them with his athletic ability. So, Commanders, obviously turmoil, ownership changes, new coach, like they got to go, maybe not edgy, but they're definitely trying to plant their flag somewhere. And I think Jaden Daniels is a way to possibly re-energize the fan base, right? That division has seen what a mobile quarterback can do with Jalen Hurts, and this, and even Dak to an extent, and
well, Daniel Jones is a pretty
Daniel
mobile
Jones,
guy.
yes.
Yeah.
Like, so they need someone who can probably move a little bit, just because that's what everyone else has, and it's a copycat league. But they've seen the success, right? Cowboys regular season success, not so much the postseason. The Eagles regular season success for the most part, right? Last season was a little choppy, but heck, they got to a Super Bowl out of it. So here we go. This is copycat. So I'm gonna say that's why I went Jaden Daniels there.
Right.
I see it. All right. That moves us to number 3. The Patriots on the clock. They also go quarterback. I have them going Drake May.
Yeah, that seems like a very New England pick.
It just feels like that. If Drake May is not 1, he's probably not 2, right? So he's probably not 1. He's probably not 2. Like, Drake May should already start looking for real estate there in the Northeast. Like, it just feels like that's what's going to happen.
Fair enough. And number 4, we had a trade come in. The Cardinals were sitting at number 4. Minnesota, having seen 3 QBs come off the board, could not wait to get their pick in and make sure that they went out and got their guy. So trade coming in.
Before you say that Minnesota went there, we also kicked around an idea of Denver possibly moving up to this pick.
It's true.
But the general manager for Minnesota presented a much better offer than the general manager for Denver was willing to present. So that's why Minnesota won out.
Very true.
So in our scenario, we have Minnesota giving up the 11th overall, the 23rd overall, and the 167th overall in exchange for the number 4 pick number 66, and pick number 162. So had to give up 2 firsts to do it. And what is that? A 4th, right? Is that what we did?
Yeah, I think so.
No, early 3rd. Sorry, it's a 3rd at 66. So, or no, that's what they got in exchange. They got a 3rd in exchange. Sorry. So they gave up 2 firsts and a 6th for the 1st, a 3rd, and a 6th, essentially is what it was. So, but they had to get their guy, right? You cannot leave it to doubt or leave it to uncertainty. And Minnesota decided, you know what? We have Justin Jefferson. We have Hawkinson, excuse me, and we have Jordan Addison. We need to find someone to distribute the ball. So they traded up to grab JJ McCarthy.
Man, how do you think the folks there in the Great White North are feeling after you give up a lot to then go get JJ McCarthy?
You know what? I think Minnesota's okay with it because he's a regional kid, right? Coming out of the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have folks in the region who are aware of him. Many in Minnesota probably cursed his name slightly, playing collegiately. But, ultimately, they're a pretty loyal fan base, right? They'll be chanting Skull, and they'll be getting behind him in hopes that he's able to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers and see where it leads. So I think Minnesota will honestly will be pretty happy with this. They wanted something different than Kirk Cousins, so they got Kirk Cousins' cousin, JJ McCarthy.
Right. Well, they go out and sign Sam Darnold. I mean, that's So again, I don't know that that's the answer that they're looking for. So I feel like they're probably liking this here quite a bit.
No.
Because they saw what happens when you don't have a quarterback down the stretch there last season. So
Absolutely.
All righty.
So go ahead.
I was just saying that moves to you still with the number 5 pick with the Chargers.
Yep. The Chargers are going to take advantage of this, right? 4 quarterbacks go, so they get their pick of the litter over non-quarterbacks for the draft, and they have some bigger holes. A guy who Harbaugh had to plan against in college, but is going to welcome him in open arms, being able to get him into at least some form of yellow, which I'm sure he will give this player a ration of grief about. But one Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be heading out west to play for the LA Chargers.
I could see that one. I could also see Harbaugh potentially looking O-line here, or even trading back. Like, wouldn't surprise me to see Arizona try come back up here to this, trying to deal to a couple of those picks they just acquired to come back up and get their guy.
So that's what I was thinking here too. Is that like I wasn't thinking it at the time. I think
right,
like
yeah.
It just dawned in my head while we were talking about the deal that Minnesota makes to get with Arizona. Like, hey, maybe the Chargers see that and they're like, hey, wait a minute, we would also like to grab a little bit of a haul, because Derek, you said something last week that you saw that they said like, look, this pick is essentially the first pick in the draft. I guess that was Arizona that was kind of viewing it that way, right?
No, Harbaugh came out and said if 4 quarterbacks, if the first 4 picks are quarterbacks, pick 5 really is
it's the number 1 pick.
Yeah,
it's the number 1 pick of literally everything else. They don't need a quarterback, provided they keep that team doctor out of the way. And I just think that like it's possible that they do trade out of that and try to find a team that's quarterback heavy or quarterback needy. And then maybe doesn't think like, oh, our guy's not going to make it down to us. Man, I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, on draft night if we see back-to-back trades there. Maybe Arizona does come back up, acquire some more depth, because Lord knows they need the depth. They don't really need splash. They need depth. And so that's kind of what they get out of that. I do think, though, I agree with you, Kevin, if they do go if they do stake here, the Chargers, that it's likely Harrison. Like you don't let that get away from you.
I could see Harbaugh going Neighbors as well, right? Like I did have to think about this for a second and get into the head of Jim Harbaugh, which is
dangerous place
scary.
to be.
Yes, definitely dangerous.
Well, nobody's got it better. So
are your khakis pressed?
And that was I think that might have been the problem why it took me so long. I had to go press them. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting, right? Does he hold that hatred for the scarlet and gray while he's in LA, or is that done? Are bygones bygones, and that's done? That chapter of his life was over. He got a national championship before Ryan Day did.
Yeah.
And so, is it done and over with? And now he's going to take Harrison. But Neighbors, if he were to go Malik Neighbors, I wouldn't be surprised here, right? But they have to find a way. They let Mike Williams go. Quentin Johnston is he's not the answer, right? Like he's not dynamic enough. His hands were shaky. Keenan Allen has so little time left. Like you got to find weapons for Justin Herbert, even though Harbaugh is assuming they're going to go with this 3-headed monster at running back and try and pound the ball. But in the AFC West, pounding the ball only works so far because you still have to get past the Chiefs. And to get past the Chiefs, you have to put pressure on that secondary. And You are not able to do that with a bunch of guys. Like, you have to have playmakers, i.e. Cincinnati, who always gives Kansas City more than what they bargained for. It's because they have a dynamic quarterback and playmakers all over the field.
Yeah. I could see that. I know last week that was one of those that we talked about this one too, where I could see the Chargers, if they're sitting here and they're going through that and they really are wanting to try and establish the run, things like that. I could see them going with an offensive tackle.
Take
Alt.
Yeah,
I could see them going with Alt.
I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't. The chances of you going wrong at offensive line are so much less,
right,
than any other position group, that I wouldn't be opposed to that if I were a Chargers fan. I'm sure that they'd like the shiny new toy, but sometimes you have to get that old, 93 Ford that'll just get you through all the muck before you can upgrade and get yourself a BMW.
That's the best analogy ever.
For what it's worth, the shiny new toy is only good if the quarterback can stay upright to play with it, right? Like, right. If you can't do that, then what have you done there?
Need a new team doctor to help with that, because
there you go.
I think they've tried just about everything else.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on. The Giants picking at 6 here. I think whatever direction the Chargers go, the Giants, I think, are firmly in this pick here. I don't see them trading out of it. If Harrison Jr. is off the board, Neighbors is next, right? If Neighbors is off the board, then it's Harrison Jr. here. I think it's wide receiver here. I have them taking Malik Neighbors.
What? Okay. No, I guess we did that kind of in 1.0 without the trades.
Yes.
But even that was slightly different because Derek took Alt. So what if Harrison and Neighbors are gone? So 3 quarterbacks go.
Then I think they maybe do look to trade out here.
But you got to find a partner. So would the Giants dare take the replacement at quarterback?
Take a whatever.
Wouldn't surprise me.
JJ or whoever's here.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me.
That would be something. I mean, they did it before.
Right. Like,
and it gives you a full training year, right? Like,
yeah.
He is now under zero pressure to start year 1. But if it doesn't work out, you have your contingency plan sitting in the wings.
And the Giants have done that, right? The Giants did that with Daniel Jones.
Right.
Daniel Jones was sitting in the wings waiting for Eli to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like, it's not uncharacteristic for that franchise.
Right.
Again,
that is a good thought.
Maybe the individual will have something like that. Who knows? Stay tuned next week for more on the Good Old Boys football channel.
I like it. Yeah, I could see them doing it for sure. All right, that brings us to number 7, Tennessee Titans, and this one feels like a foregone conclusion. If this guy is here, I don't see the Giants going not the Giants. I don't see the Titans going anywhere else other than Joe Alt, and that's the pick here at number 7.
I like it.
Yeah,
I completely agree with it.
All right, Kevin, that moves us to number 8 with the Falcons, and you are the pickaroo for the Falcons.
All right, so the Atlanta Falcons are going to take the first defensive player off the board, right? They've gone offense in 3 consecutive drafts there in the first round. They're going to change it up, and now they're going to get a guy who can get after the quarterback in a defense that was much improved last year, but they could still use a little bit more, right? Because ultimately they're going to need to be able to slow down some of their opponents there in the NFC South and let this offense develop. So Jared Verse out of Florida State is going to be their first round pick. The dynamic pass rusher is heading to, I guess, up I-75 to go to the Dirty South.
I like this pick, and that's one that I could see there, but this is one that that it wouldn't surprise me if they went a different edge rusher as well. Like, what was the kind of the determining factor here between Verse and a guy like Dallas Turner?
I think Verse is the best overall pass rusher in this class, right? I had the luxury of being able to do the player profile on him when we were kind of going through that, and I really started to admire his game a little bit. So I think he's a little bit more dynamic when it comes into it. He has a little bit of a quicker burst, I feel like, than Dallas Turner. And so I gave him the edge. And you know, the Falcons don't draft Georgia players, but they do like regional players. And yes, Dallas Turner is one as well. But I think they saw what Florida State did this year, and they're going to take a gamble here and try and get Jared into camp and have him hit the ground running.
Very good. Alex, that moves us to number 9, Chicago. You're on the clock.
Making their second pick here in the top 10. They already went and got their quarterback, so I think they go and get a nice receiver for that quarterback. I'm going Rome Odunze out of Washington.
I like the pairing there for sure. The with that, like I guess, was there any consideration looking at like potentially offensive line or defensive line here?
I mean, yes. So you're always looking at offensive line, defensive line, but I just feel like you have such a. This is so uncommon to be able to have a quarterback under your control for 5 years and then have one of what could be his top target under control for 5 years, and you can build off of that, right? Like you can build. I think Chicago needs to do a lot to get the fans back. And the one way you do that is by playing an exciting brand of football. And you have a quarterback who has a big target. So yeah, realistically, probably I'm like 75-25. They go white out here. Harrison and Neighbors off the board kind of make me think that it might pivot, but I like Odunze enough. The guy's a winner, played pretty inspiring football there at the end. We all got to see kind of how he operated. So I think that's where Chicago goes here. Fair
enough. That puts us with number 10, the Jets. I've got that pick with the for New York here, and one that I as this picker, I was really hoping that Odunze fell right here to number 10, because I do think that if he's there, that's the route the Jets go. But he was not, and at that point, still think that they're going to go out and try and get some additional weapons outside of Garrett Wilson in that passing game for Aaron Rodgers this year, and so they're going to go Brock Bowers as a guy that can certainly kind of line up in the slot, play in line, and kind of maneuver around there and do some different looks for them as well.
I hated that you make this pick. I think it makes a ton of sense, but I hated that you made it because it made my life so much harder in 2 picks time.
All right,
I think it makes tons of sense, right? It allows him to play more offline than inline, because the Jets do have tight ends on the roster that are probably built for a more traditional inline. But again, when you're going up against Miami and you're going up against
Buffalo,
the Bills, and the Bills offensively is going to look completely different, but they still have Kincaid. And then we're going to see what else they do. But you got to be able to put up some points in that division, as well as that Jets defense is, or as good as that Jets defense is. We saw they still need to find a way to get to 20, right? And if Aaron Rodgers is back and healthy, I think you automatically gain, probably 6 points a game just in 2 drives, right? Even if it's a couple field goals, I think you gain 6 points a game average. But it does give them a threat coming out of the slot, coming offline a little bit, who can be dynamic in some short to intermediate routes.
Absolutely. All righty, that moves us to number 11. Arizona's sitting there after the trade with Minnesota, and this is one of those that they've got several options out there, and with this pick, I ended up going with Dallas Turner here for the Cardinals. This is a guy that wouldn't surprise me to learn that he's on the short list, even at their pick number 4 type of deal. Defensive minded head coach. They've got areas of opportunity all over the field, and going with a potential dynamic edge rusher to be kind of that stopper on that side of the ball could certainly help out with that.
All right, that moves us into the Broncos at 12, and obviously their needs, quarterback, corner, D tackle, edge, offensive tackle, tight end, a linebacker. Have I missed any position on the field yet? Safety, assistant coach, head coach. A lot of needs in Denver. Can you tell I'm really excited for Broncos football this year? So with Brock Bowers gone, I don't know that Denver goes quarterback here because spurned, right? There's a real good chance they might go quarterback here and take like a Bo Nix or Michael Penix, or I know. So I'm just going to will this into the universe, and I'm going to say that they're going to go address defensive side of the ball. You're still playing a division with Patrick Mahomes. And their defense has just been kind of decimated, right? Justin Simmons is gone. There's a couple other dudes that left. It's too many for me to remember name, and it was all depressing when it was all happening. And so I've gone corner, and I've gone Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. And you're going to say, why'd you pick that one over the other ones? Well, because he can Pro Football Focus has him as their top ranked corner. Those are smart people over there. So PFF's got him ranked as their top, and they have him in versatility, right? Can play corner, can play safety. Like it doesn't really matter. And the Broncos need help in a couple of those spots, right? They need some help at safety. They need some help at corner. If you've got a guy that you can just get on your roster and figure out a spot for him, I think that works. So that's why I've gone Cooper DeJean out of Iowa for Denver at the 12 spot.
I think the versatility might be the best point to make here.
Yeah.
Because, when you first made the pick, I was like, that doesn't move the needle. But with that versatility, he automatically gets on the field in nickel packages.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL plays so much nickel now that it does put him in a start now mode.
Right.
And again, the Broncos have so many holes, and maybe it's not the utmost of importance, but being able to learn from and work with a guy like Patrick Surtain, like if you are able to become his shadow, right, and learn what Surtain learns and be able to replicate some of the achievements and highlights that Surtain's been able to do, we'll look back at this pick and go, yeah, it wasn't sexy, but it was smart. And honestly, right now, the Broncos do need smart. Like they just do. They have gaping holes everywhere, and they do just need smart. So I hope it pans out, but it's the Broncos, so I'm gonna wait and reserve judgment for a year or two down the road when we actually figure out how these players pan out.
Fair enough. All righty, that moves us to number 13. And Raiders have got that pick. Lots of needs on this one. They could potentially look at quarterback here. I think they're still searching there. Look at a guy like Bo Nix or Michael Penix potentially. But I think they're going to go with the cornerback here, right? Like when you're playing in the AFC West and you're dealing with some of the quarterback competition that's there. Certainly a requirement to help slow down that side of the ball. And so they're going to go with Quinion Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo, which they were very thankful that the Broncos took Cooper DeJean.
Yeah. Is there a reason you went with Mitchell over like a Michael Penix for LA or sorry, Las Vegas?
Really, it came down to the fact that I don't know that you get the immediate boost out of Bo Nix or Michael Penix over what you already have on the roster there. From
Say you got Gardner in house already. Is either of those guys better than Minshew?
I mean, maybe they could potentially be a couple of years down the road, but I mean, you're talking a little bit of development project for guys that have coming out 5, 6, Bo Nix forever in the college ranks type of thing, and again, right, just looking to potentially try and mitigate some of the offense that they're playing up against in the division, just to try and slow some of those teams down a little bit. And I think Mitchell's a guy that can develop into a shutdown corner in this league.
Well, Nix has Josh Rosen written all over him. See, I'm dead serious. I know I haven't gotten a whole lot of grief for it, which I'm kind of surprised because there have been some Bo Nix homers out there pumping him up, but I can't say it enough. Bo Nix has never beat anybody better than him, ever, other than his very first game at Auburn. The very first game of his collegiate career as a wide-eyed freshman who just didn't know any better, going out and beating Oregon. And after that, he never beat anybody better than him. You can't win like that in the NFL. You just can't. Those Auburn teams had more than enough talent. That Oregon team had more than enough talent, and they lost a close one, and then they got the brakes beat off of them by Washington. Yeah, so I'm clearly not a Bo Nix believer. Penix would have been interesting, right? Like, if nothing else, to have him sit behind Minshew for a year. Because Minshew's not a bad stopgap.
No,
but as
a really good bridge for
seen,
sure.
Yeah, he is a good bridge guy. Like, but as we've seen, right, in Jacksonville and then Indianapolis, like he's gonna win you some games, but he's gonna lose you a game or two along the way. And you're just gonna be if you're the Raiders, I think you're basically picking in the exact same spot next year with more uncertainty at quarterback still, if by not going that route. But again, this is why these guys get paid millions of dollars, and I sit here on a Tuesday night and tell you my opinion.
Well, and honestly, I think that Penix is the guy that stock is rising the fastest, and it won't surprise me to see Bo Nix, who a lot of the folks out there and do this very professionally have kind of slotted him in there as a potential top 15 pick. He's a guy that's not going to surprise me seeing slide all the way into the second round. I do think that we're going to see Bo Nix's name called day 2. I don't know that we're going to see it called day 1. And Penix is a guy that I think we're going to see continue to kind of climb up there to the point where he's the 5th quarterback off the board when this thing's all said and done.
Yeah, we probably undervalued Penix in this version, to be completely transparent. But nevertheless, we're going to move on to pick number 14, where the New Orleans Saints are going to bring in an offensive lineman here to help keep Derek Carr upright and hopefully not throw his receivers under the bus anymore. Talisa Fuaga. Did I say that right, Alex?
Yeah.
All right, we got it right. 1 for 1 here on the hard names. Yes, Talisa Fuaga is going to New Orleans.
I really like that pick. I think that is the spot they go as offensive line. It wouldn't surprise me to see New Orleans potentially try and sneak up to get their guy if they really have a guy that they're looking for to try and sneak up in their 11, 12, 10 type of pick just to get their guy.
And I can see J.C. Latham going up this early as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think again, like as we're going back through and looking at this, like crap, like yeah, he fell all the way in this one. He's probably, like, if we're being honest with ourselves, again, this is how doing a round robin can kind of hurt you at times because your game plan gets thrown off a little bit. So he probably fell a little bit more than he needed to. I could see Latham jumping up here to the Saints as well, but for this exercise, did not happen.
If he hasn't already gone, right? Like somebody pivots and goes line just because Latham is sitting there, right? Like
Like Chicago?
Yeah, Chicago goes O-line there. Like, yeah. That's
Heck,
he
the
probably
Broncos
fell.
bring in their swing tackle,
Yeah.
Right.
right? I mean,
Or the
you're not going to keep
Chargers
gold,
trade down.
Right.
right?
There's a lot of scenarios here, and you're right, Kevin. In this exercise, he probably fell a little farther than he should have, but that's the way it goes. We'll move to the Colts at 15, unless anybody has an objection.
Negative Ghost
The
Ray.
Colts at 15. I kind of got on a little bit of a corner run here with my picks, and I've gone with Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. Again, ranked the third best corner according to those fine folks over there at Pro Football Focus. So that's where I have Indianapolis going here.
Yeah.
I like this pick.
Yeah. Same.
Thanks.
Like, I think the Colts are eyeing Quinion Mitchell. Like, I think that's who they would like to get. But Nate Wiggins is a very fine 1B choice.
Yeah. I think they go cornerback here. And if, Wiggins isn't there, Terry and Arnold, I really do think that we're going to see cornerback at number 15 when it's all said and done to Indy. So I like the pick. That moves us to number 16. Seattle's on the clock. They've got all sorts of kind of defensive side of the ball help that is needed. And they're going to go with Latu, the edge rusher out of UCLA. This is one that initially I didn't think that he would fall down this far, and was really eyeing defensive tackle for this pick. More of a Johnny Newton or a Brian Murphy type of pick here, but the fact that Latu fell here, seemed too juicy to pass up.
No, I like it. Jaguars are on the clock after that, and they are going to go Terry and Arnold. So they're going to go a cornerback, help bolster that secondary to slow down what Houston's doing, because man, they just keep bringing in pass catchers.
Absolutely.
That offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. A lot of fun to watch. That Houston offense is going to be fun.
I wholeheartedly agree. All right, Cincinnati's on the clock at 18. They need help on both lines, O-line, D-line. So I went O-line here again. Kind of thought this guy was already. Kind of thought Latham might have already been gone. Again, maybe an oversight on my part, but I've gone Troy Fontenot to the Bengals here.
Yeah, certainly see them going offensive line there to help Burrow out.
You got to.
All right, then moving to number 19, the Rams. Again, they've got help kind of all over the place that's required on the defensive side of the ball. But they're gonna go and they're gonna spend some draft capital on the defensive tackle, going with Newton, the defensive tackle out of Illinois. You're kind of a big body guy that kind of helps stop the run. Certainly going to play a lot in what Aaron Donald was playing before, but it's going to be a hard time filling those shoes, I do believe.
Yeah, right. Completely. Game's a lot different. Maybe I shouldn't say completely different. Game's a lot different. Aaron Donald was just a pure specimen.
Yes.
All right. Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. And they're going to go offensive line here, right? They brought in Russ. They brought in Justin Fields. They went from Kenny Pickett to at least a well-rounded quarterback room between Wilson and Fields. So they're going to go Olamuwia Fashanu. Yeah, that's what I'm going with. Olu. So they're going with
Olu.
Yeah. So this is a very Pittsburgh call, right?
Yes.
This is very Pittsburgh. More interior than exterior offensive line, but nevertheless, Pittsburgh had some offensive line woes in getting the run going on top of the pressure that they were allowing to get on top of Kenny Pickett. And this division is filled with pass rushers, and you have to be able to slow them down.
I like that pick.
Yeah. All right. Finally, Miami at 21. JC Latham hears his name called. Hope he doesn't book his trip to. Oh God, where's the draft at this year?
Detroit.
At least in this
Burns
version.
my ass that Detroit got a draft before Denver did.
Well,
like
what happens.
Like what are they going to do in Detroit? Get robbed?
But the Detroit ownership group has been there longer than the Denver ownership group. So
yes,
it's the way it goes.
You know who was there longer? No one. It's the Fords. They've been there forever.
Forever.
But yeah, Pat
they were there when
Bowles
Detroit was still a profitable town.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, okay, here we go. Miami on the clock at 21. And JC Latham finally goes. Again, I don't know that he falls here. How thrilled would the Dolphins be if JC Latham falls to them at 21?
It'd be ecstatic. We'd see Mike McDaniels wearing his capris all the way, like just making a mad dash up to the stage.
Sprinting.
Yeah. He wouldn't be in the war. Like he'd somehow find a way to get up there in his little capris to make that pick. So
I still would take a draft war room session over a Super Bowl. That
would be so fun. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Having been to a Super Bowl, I would agree with you. I just
I'd rather go to a college national championship game than a Super Bowl. Also, but given a choice, if I could pick a singular NFL experience, I think this would be no questions asked, no exceptions, everything else. A singular NFL experience. I think I would ask to sit in a war room on day 1 and day 2. Day 3, I think I'd get bored and fall asleep in the corner.
Day 3 is when the grind happens.
Yeah, but day 1, with all the trades and everything else, yes. But I mean, day 1 especially, to sit in that war room and I think that would be a awesome experience, and I feel like the NFL is missing out somehow by not giving a lucky season ticket holder for each franchise, their name gets thrown in a lottery.
No, but you will get to announce one of the picks from the war room. You have to have some mystique and stuff and some mystery behind it. That's why
I don't want to announce. Cool. I don't want to announce, and I don't want to show up to any of the pre-meetings. I want to just show up on draft day and just sit there
hear
and
the
listen.
Conversations.
Yes.
Be a fly on the wall, basically.
Complete gag order, right? I don't want anything beforehand. I don't want the leaks. I don't want drama. I want to hand my cell phone over to whoever's in charge of keeping my device, so that way I can't do anything about it. And I just want to sit there and listen to the conversation. And I know I'm going down a rabbit trail, and I apologize. But this experience, this would do it for me, though. The ultimate, holy shit moment.
Yeah.
I got to go through this. For me, this would be it. I think it would be super cool.
There you go.
Yes. Alrighty, that's gonna move us to number 22. The Philadelphia is on the clock, and they've got needs at cornerback. In fact, Alex, you had talked earlier about one of these draft picks. Would the Eagles potentially move up to try and do that? I think the Eagles are pretty well set, just kind of staying right here at number 22. And they're going to take Graham Barton out of Duke. Played center there, but he can also kind of move around that offensive line, play a lot of interior line, and they certainly need some help there. Big hole to fill with Kelsey retiring there. So I think they go with Graham Barton, a guy that could play center, a guy that can play off interior line there and kind of bolster that line all up and around there.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely need to address losing your future Hall of Fame center.
Correct. Yep.
The only hang up I have with this pick is the Eagles don't draft ACC players.
That's fair.
So is there a center coming out of Georgia? Because
no, but there's
that one.
There's a tackle that was picked a couple of picks later.
And it's not even, and that's not even where I'm thinking necessarily. Their dire need is in the secondary, And Derek, I think you have the Eagles pick going to Arizona with your next pick right now.
It very well could be. And it was certainly on the thought process, right? When I was looking through that, but yeah, I ended up going the offensive line just from the standpoint that is a big hole, and so much of their offense is built off of what the offensive line is capable of doing. And so that's kind of where I went there. But wouldn't surprise me if they go with who Arizona takes here with the number 23 pick. And this was part of the trade with Minnesota earlier. And Arizona, having already taken the defensive edge rusher in Dallas Turner's, now turning around and taking a cornerback to further bolster the defensive side of the ball, going with Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback out of Alabama. And this was a guy that many people thought was the best cornerback going into this last college football season at Alabama until Terry and Arnold really kind of stepped up and made a stamp on that. But Kool-Aid McKinstry, definitely a rock solid corner that could be a big bolster for this Arizona team.
All right, that moves us to the Cowboys at 24, and I have gone Amarius Mims on the offensive line there.
Yeah, I think this works. I think he slides in the right tackle right away for the Cowboys.
I think the Cowboys have a lot of holes that they need to fill, and I think, look, they didn't do anything in free agency, so like you've got to address these needs here, right? Because you're not doing it through free agency, and priority number one needs to be to get that run game back to where it needs to be and protect Dak.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this pick for the Cowboys. It gets back to kind of what their focus was back when Romo was quarterback, right? When they got Tyron Smith and they drafted Travis Frederick and they drafted
in Dak's rookie year, he played behind the best offensive line in the league, right? Like, and they were good. They were a playoff team.
Yeah. And they priced themselves out and they aged out and they didn't do a good enough job replenishing. So restart the cycle because they've shown that does work. So I like this pick for the Cowboys.
Yeah, so do I. It's very Cowboy-esque. So that's going to lead us into Green Bay, and Green Bay is going to go with the offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, Tyler Guyton. This one feels very much like a Green Bay style pick here as well.
No, absolutely. Tampa Bay is next up on the docket. They need some help getting to the quarterback, and so they're going to bring in Darius Robinson to play defensive end for them and help apply some pressure to said quarterbacks as they look a little different, right? They had to move some things around with cap space and everything else, but Mike Evans is coming back. They still have Chris Godwin, Baker's coming back. So they kept the band together for the most part. But they're definitely missing some sacks on the stat sheet. So Robinson should help with that.
Yeah. I like that pick. So we did have a trade happen here with picks 27, and Arizona got in the mix with the trading again, and Buffalo decided to come up and take pick number 27 off of their hands.
So the reason why I think Arizona is a candidate to trade out of here, if the trade with Minnesota happens, 3 first-round picks is really expensive. It gets really, really expensive really quickly. So I think most teams can afford 2, right? Not all. Most teams, Arizona obviously can. They're already planning for that, right? They already have 2 first-round picks. I think 3 first-round picks might be a little too pricey. So I think that they're a candidate to trade out of this spot. I think that we could see a team like Buffalo move up, right? In case they think that there might be some rumblings of teams coming back into the first round to try and snag a wide receiver. I think that's where Buffalo is going here, is wide receiver. I don't think they have enough to get up to kind of the first run of receivers there, which ended at 9. We haven't seen a wide receiver go. We saw 3 in the first 9 picks, and we haven't seen one since. So I think Buffalo gets antsy here. Arizona's a willing trade partner because they already have 2 first-round picks. So Buffalo moves up here, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Arizona, which we have them picking next, trades out again to get out of the first round and finds another dance partner to come in from the second round. I'm not sure who that would be, but Buffalo here on the clock at 27, and I have them taking Brian Thomas Jr.
All righty. Except that I was picking for Buffalo. But
Well, you were picking for Buffalo.
yes. So
and I apologize.
you had Arizona
picking Brian Thomas Jr.
Yes, that's true.
If you want to take my thunder here, you go right ahead.
So Arizona traded back one, and I think there is something to what you're saying when you're talking about the potentially trading back again. But I'm also a big believer in the fact that they went out and addressed heavily on the defensive side of the ball. They still need wide receiver help here. And if trading out of this pick, you're likely going to have the next run of wide receiver happen where you're now picking, you now got your limited with what they would have fall to them in the second round, because I think wouldn't surprise me to see a whole run happen between the last couple of picks in the first couple of picks into the second, to the point where now it's the options are much more limited. So I could see where you're talking about them trading back, but I would think that they're going to stick here and get their wide receiver to help out with that. And they're going with Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas here to really do that. And this is a guy that can play kind of all across the board. He can play outside. He can play out of the slot a little bit, but this is a guy that could be your kind of your big body X to be the target for Kyler.
And the reason why Derek chose Mitchell there over, say, Xavier Worthy, and I'll speak for Derek here, since I feel like I really was in his mind when he was making this pick, is that I think it is size, right? I think Worthy's going to struggle, I think, in the NFL. It's just a little too small. So I think a guy like Mitchell is a much better prospect than Worthy is.
Right. Like, you can't teach speed, but we didn't see John Ross develop beyond
speed.
Anything there, right? Like, and that's not that uncommon, right? Like a lot of the track stars, guys that go out there and set the top 10 all-time 40-yard dashes, very few of them have really anything, fantasy relevance, much less beyond that.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so next up we have the Detroit Lions, and this one for me was too good to pass up, because we always go back to the Dan Campbell speech of biting kneecaps. Well, what do you have to be able to do to bite their kneecaps? You have to chop them down. So the Detroit Lions are going to bring in Chop Robinson, the defensive end, to help get them down to size so they can bite their kneecaps.
I love this. And the crowd goes wild there in Detroit, right? Like, you talk about somebody who will just
encapsulate that fan base. You can hear it now, right? Chop, 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 chop.
It would just be so much fun. For the scene only, I hope that happens. Like, also kind of a secret Lions fan now, just because they're disruptors. And it was fun following them last year.
I'd agree. I can't help but root for the Lions because I like Dan Campbell so damn much.
Yeah.
I just can't help but root for the Lions. Now, it helps that we are all big time Amon-Ra St. Brown fans, right? Like, that helps. Obviously, Gibbs is dynamic, and that's a lot of fun. But Dan Campbell is the guy that does it for me. That even if those players weren't in Detroit, I love listening to him speak, and how he coaches, and the passion, and how he does want to relate to these players and let them know that, look, we are in this together. I buy into that message from him. And there's some coaches where you hear it and you're like, yeah, that's coach speak. But for some reason, when Dan Campbell is giving that message, I buy in. Like, I flash back to playing even back in high school, right? It's like, okay, coach, yep, you tell me where you want me, coach. I'll go do it, coach. Like, anything for you. And he's just that guy. So I completely agree, Alex. Like, I am a closet Lions fan because of Dan Campbell.
Yeah. All right, we move to the Ravens here at 30, and they need help on the line. They could use an edge rusher. I think they go on the line, and I have them going Jackson Powers Johnson.
Yeah, I could certainly see them doing that, right? Jackson Power Johnson, certainly a guy that can play on that interior and help out there. All right, moving on to San Francisco. The San Francisco, they could go several different routes here, but I think that they're going to play on the defensive side of the ball. Cornerback is a big need for them, and Enos Rakestraw is available, and that's where I think that they're going to go, the cornerback out of Missouri.
No, I like that. And then to round out round number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought about going receiver here. I thought about a possible trade, but the teams who still need quarterback to trade up are both in Kansas City's division. So I quickly scrapped that idea. I think a trade for the Broncos or Raiders is going to have to be a jump to 30 or 31. They're not going to be able to do it at 32. So that got scrapped because it's in division. So the Chiefs went back and they are going to work on their offensive line, and they're going to bring in Jordan Morgan.
That's a good pick there. And look, the Chiefs, it's so weird because we look at the Chiefs after they win their Super Bowl and we're like, man, not sure how they're going to repeat. They're going to have so many holes that they're going to have to fill. And then lo and behold, they're just there every year. It helps when you have, 15 calling plays and slinging it around and 87 catching it, 90 times a season. That really helps. But yeah, I think the Chiefs O-line is, you can never have enough quality offensive or defensive linemen.
Yeah. And I think the Hollywood Brown move can take them out of first round wide receiver contention, and you don't feel bad about that. However, I do see them going receiver in day 2.
For sure. And there's plenty of good day 2 receiver talent, right? They're not going to be alone. Like Derek was saying earlier, right? If we start to see this run of receiver, I think it carries over into day 2 there, where it's more receiver than not being taken for the end of day 1 into day 2.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. You'll see some receivers. You might see a running back go in day 2, but I think early in day 3 is when you're going to see a lot of running backs go. The class just isn't overall overly dynamic, right? So I think you could see 1, maybe 2 go in the 3rd round. But I do think the 4th rounds, we're going to see quite a few running backs come off, but there's still a ton of receivers we didn't touch, right? Like these teams are banking on the fact that the pool was so good, they're going to address other needs and be happy with a guy that they get in day 2 or day 3 at the wide receiver position.
We'll do a quick recap, not of all the picks, but is there anything, Kevin, we did this last week too, that stands out to you? A pick, obviously, I think we all agree JC Latham falling to 21, likely not going to happen. I think the big thing here is that we see those 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, and then we don't see another one.
Yep, that's what I teed off on too, right? Like you said, we touched on the JC Latham pick. I think the fact that we don't have another quarterback coming off after we've all been on the record saying that the number's over 4.5, right? And we really flirted with 5.5 if that was the over. And then for there to only be 4 come off in this round was a little interesting for us. So I think that was a pretty big takeaway there. But I think for the most part, I do feel these guys are all first round talent players, right? Like I don't feel like anybody reached outside of themselves. I think that there were a lot of positions of need that were addressed in this 2.0 that we did. But with that, we probably missed a couple opportunities to get Penix and even, as much as it pains me to say, even potentially Bo Nix into this first round.
Yeah, Derek's been on this kick that it's either 4 or 6. It's not going to be 5.
Right. Because I do think that's how that's going to be. But it wouldn't surprise me that very similar to like last year, right? Like we all thought that it would be for sure 4 quarterbacks coming off the board in the first round. And sure enough, Levis slipped all the way to the second.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a guy that a lot of people had as a top 5 pick. So yeah, and that's where I think I'm at, is that you're either going to see 4, you're going to see 6 when it's all said and done.
Derek, any surprises for you in our draft here? Kevin and I were talking about the 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks and none again. I think seeing our first real edge come off the board at 11.
Verse at 8 is a
Oh yeah, I guess
edge.
excuse me. You're right. But still at 8, typically you're going to see an edge rusher come off the board a little sooner than that.
Well, the thing that I think is a little interesting, right, is the fact that you don't see an edge, defensive line, or an offensive line in the top 6 picks. Like that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, is that it's just how typically most of these drafts go. It's hard to believe that's the earliest that one of those guys is taken, is at pick 7 and pick 8, and then again you only have 2, an edge rusher and a lineman taken in the top 10, and that's it. So that's probably my biggest kind of surprise, is the fact that two of the positions that you typically see very heavily drafted and early drafted there's only 1 of each in the top 10. And then we still ended up, I think when I was counting it up, we still ended up with 10 offensive linemen.
10 O-linemen, yeah. I just went through and did the quick count there.
When it was all said and done, but only 1 taken in the top 10.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a really kind of moment, was the fact that so heavy laden with and this offensive line class is good and it's deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, that was probably my biggest shocker, was just the fact that how the board kind of fell and where positions came off the board at.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, again, talking quarterbacks, for someone to jump up who would need one, the Broncos don't have a 2nd round pick.
Right.
So they cannot, feasibly. They're not going to be able to jump up. So if you look
unless they're giving up future, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're giving up 25 stuff, which they have, but I don't know that they leverage the farm on that.
So if you look at Oakland, right? If Penix falls and they go, you know what? This is worth it. We're going to try and trade with Baltimore for kicks and giggles, right? The Raiders essentially, again, based off the rough calculator, the Raiders would have to give up their 44th overall pick and their 4th round pick, which is 112th overall, in exchange for pick 30 from Baltimore, and then Baltimore's 5th rounder, which would be 165.
I could see them doing that.
Which, again, rough numbers, right? It all changes, but just in general, like that's what. If I'm Vegas, that is a price worth paying to get the 5th year on a quarterback.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You have a developmental year, then you have 3 years where you can run him, and then you get to decide if you want him as a 4th year starter. Right. And then you have the franchise tag. Right. I mean, so it allows you a lot of control to be able to do that. But roughly, that is
Or
what
more
it would.
typically, you get the developmental year. You have the 2 years where you can run him. You start. He's the third-year starter and has a fantastic season. You sign him to a stupid extension, and then he's not on your roster by year 5.
Yes.
Seems to be more likely than the other scenario that you've described.
Yes.
Lately, you are correct.
So awesome. Any additional thoughts out there?
Oh, I will be intrigued to see how we do our individual drafts, right? So now we've done 2 versions, right? We've gone our 1.0 is no trades, which we know won't happen, right? Like there's no way there isn't a draft night deal made. Or even a deal leading up to, right? Like we've done round 1 as it sat, in early April. Now we've done this version with trades, and I think they're likely more than what we've done. I think there are candidates for trades that we just didn't think about, or that we did think about, but we didn't see a way that it got done. But in real life, things work differently. And now we get to do our own version where we are the GM for all 32 teams, and we can make whatever trades and deals we want to, and how we think we see, what is that? April 29th?
25th.
No, April 25th, excuse me.
And we'll be live. Be
playing
sure to
out. Yeah.
So, no, it should be good. It'll be interesting. I'm very interested to see how each one of us kind of approaches it, and what trades get done, and kind of the rationale behind some of those. So next week's going to be a lot of fun as we start breaking that down and really going through that. So awesome. All righty. Well, guys, any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
No, I mean,
sir.
feel free to let us know what you feel like we got right, where you feel like we're way off, right? We always enjoy the banter back and forth, but as always, thank you for tuning in. We greatly appreciate everyone who jump in and support this small independent podcast, but we sure enjoy the hell out of doing it, and hopefully you guys enjoy the hell out of listening to it.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us. You can find us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places at Good Old Boys FF. Be sure to head over to the YouTube, youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF, and click the subscribe button, ring that bell. We're going live every Tuesday night during the off season, 11 p.m. Eastern, as well as we're going live here on draft night day 1, just before the first picks get going, and you'll be able to see the boys' reactions to them all. So make sure you're tuning into that. It'll be a lot of fun. But that's going to do it for us. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.